Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us today for another edition of the Commonwealth Chamber of Commerce's Tech Startup Series. For all of you joining for the first time, my name's Julia Charlton. I'm the current chair of the Commonwealth Chamber, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this Commonwealth community. For today's webinar, we'll be taking a look at the startup ecosystem of the Lion City of Asia, Singapore. The Southeast Asian nation is home to 4,000 startups, and in the past year, it accumulated $89 billion in funding, which was almost 3 times more than the global average for the same time period, with 52% of the total equity funding generated in the Southeast by the end of 2021 going to the city-state. So in last year alone, Singapore saw the rise of 11 new unicorn startups out of a total of 25 that came from the Southeast Asian region. And with these new additions, Singapore has founded now 28 unicorns out of the 49 in the region we've had so far. So looking at these achievements, it's not surprising that startup Genome, an internationally leading research organization for startup ecosystems, ranked Singapore as the fifth best ecosystem in Asia and 18th worldwide in its global startup ecosystem report for this year, saying that the nation is the ideal base to penetrate Southeast Asia's trillion-dollar digital commerce and ICT climate. So on the question of what makes the Lion City such a popular destination for venture capital firms and investors to find brilliant and aspiring startups, Singapore is the entry point to the Asia Pacific region, and it's established itself long ago as a trade and logistics hub. It's clean and efficient. It has limited resources, and so it's dedicated substantial funding into its world-class research and training institutions. And it has a rich and diverse pool of talent that's created a rising middle class in a very pro-business environment, which is also very tech-savvy and well-versed in deep tech and well-supported by government initiatives. But of course, one thing that makes jurisdiction so special, well, first of all, it's part of the Commonwealth, but it's really its people. I think they're diverse and dynamic and creative, and many are very high-spirited, and they do what it takes to go where they need to go. So to have a deeper look into what Singapore is really like, we're really going to enjoy talking to this fantastic Singaporean startup about the nuances of the startup scene in Singapore and their very special take on what it can add to be a diverse talent pool and to bring other perspectives to their business startup in Singapore. So established in 2014, it was previously called SDI Global. It's now called Crane HR, and it advocates for the welfare of migrants and refugees, but it does this in a business context. So in partnership with many international corporations and agencies, the Singaporean firm is empowering migrant workers through skills development, including English language communication skills, IT literacy, financial literacy, and entrepreneurship, training to equip them with qualifications that they require for upward social economic mobility. So realizing the global labor shortage as an opportunity rather than a barrier, in addition to the cross-border recruitment obstacles that migrants face, the team at Crane HR created a dual-sided marketplace platform that facilitates companies to hire more efficiently through their online work portfolios. And on the other hand, helps the workers bypass expensive, inefficient, and I have to say, they didn't say it, corrupt recruitment platforms. The company has been featured in leading publications, including CNBC, Straits Times, and Channel News Asia. So here with us today to represent Crane HR, we have the founder and CEO, Sazzad Hossain. Sazzad is a serial entrepreneur. He started his first venture at the age of 19 to empower migrants with education. He's an Obama leader, one of the youngest Ashoka Fellow, Forbes 30 Under 30 honoree, RSA Fellow, and so on. He was born in Bangladesh and migrated to Singapore, I think, at the age of 11. Sazzad can correct me if I'm wrong about that. At that time, he had to drop 2 grades at school in order to catch up with the language barrier. So his own initial struggles with the language compelled him to start his first social impact startup, which engaged over 140,000 migrants and locals, and it graduated 18,500 migrants and won the DBS NUS Social Venture Challenge for its work. During the pandemic, Sazzad and his team distributed over 43,000 meals and helped migrants remit over $1.2 million to their home countries. So together with Sazzad today to talk about Crane HR, we also have Nazmus Sakib Khan, who's the COO and founding team member at Crane HR. At Crane, Nazmus focuses on using public policy tools and effective policy implementation and public-private partnerships to accelerate impact within the HR tech B2B SaaS AI ecosystem for blue-collar industries. So Nazmus is also an Oxford-based global shaper of the World Economic Forum and is one of the founding members of the International Project Shapers and the Solvers, launched by Global Shapers Dakar Hub of the World Economic Forum, where his project reached more than 60,000 people. He's also one of the youngest South Asians to ever be elected as a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts, Manufacturers and Commerce. Nazmus writes extensively on economics, technology, politics and international affairs for global platforms. He's a TED speaker, and Nazmus, it's lovely to have you here. I'm sure we're going to really enjoy listening to more about what you have to tell us, particularly about your experiences where you are at the moment in the UK, which is clearly very different from Singapore. Now, over to you, Sazzad and Nazmus, for your presentation.
Thank you, Julia, for the wonderful introduction for not just myself, but also the work that we have done and Nazmus and our team members. So let me just share what we've been working on for the last 8 years. As Julia mentioned in a very wonderful manner, that we've been working in the migrant ecosystem for past 8 years. Firstly, with the education and welfaring and the championing the welfare of the migrant workers. But as we learned more about the work that they've been doing and the struggles that they've been facing, we saw a bigger problem where we could leverage on the global shortage and provide better opportunities for migrants through an ethical and transparent recruitment platform that gives them better hope for the future, but also solve the global labor shortage around the world. So we are Crane HR.AI. And our tagline is headhunting with a heart. We want to empower the world in a way that is that has a heart, but at the same time leveraging on cutting edge technologies like AI and natural language processing. We want to accelerate the impact. So as Julie has mentioned, I started SDI Academy at the age of 19 to empower migrants, and we've been very blessed to be recognized by Forbes, Obama Foundation, as well as Ashoka, and many other fellowship around the world to recognize the work that we have done. But what that has also given us is the insights of where the problems are, because this situation is a slightly complicated one, and we had to get the first-hand experience of the issues that migrants are facing, and also where can we leverage on the problems around the world to make sure this is a win-win situation. So on the employer side, in construction, oil and gas, and hospitality sectors, a big percentage of the cost is attributed to the labor cost. And this is resulting in increasing higher housing price. Oil and gas prices are through the roof. And we all know that there's a great resignation that's happening in the hospitality sectors. So, and there's currently no effective solution that handles the global cross-border hiring as well as the visa issue, which is why employers all around the world are facing a massive problem. On the migrant side, first of all, it's a very expensive process. Second of all, there's no direct pathways for them to connect directly to the employers. They have to rely on the middlemen and multiple layers, which racks up the prices. So for example, for the first migration, migrants can pay up to $14,000 to $15,000, which is about 17 months of their salary, monthly salary. And that is for the first migration from source country to transient country. And then for the transient country to destination country, which we call the second migration, they can pay up to $80,000. And that is absurd, and we think that is extremely unfair for the migrants. But just because they're paying a high amount of money does not necessarily mean the employers are getting a good deal. In fact, a survey that we done with 4,000 migrants and employers shows that there's an 88% mismatch between the skills that migrant workers possess versus the skills that is required by the employers. And this is because the agencies on the ground are placing people based on who can pay the highest rather than people with the best skill sets. What this is doing is pushing a lot of the people who are not able to pay these exorbitant prices to take uncertain and dangerous path, risking their life by going by the boat and entering countries illegally, which is creating another immigration nightmare for many countries. What we want to effectively do is to enable migrants to go in a transparent way, and for employers to be able to recruit and know that they get a great skilled migrants. And by providing these legal pathways, there'll be a reduction in these uncertain and dangerous pathways taken. So, and I would let Nazmus to take over and go through the first migration and second migration journey.
Okay. Thank you, Sazzad, for handing it over. So we at Crane, we are catering the global migrant ecosystem in two different phases. We are labeling it as first and second migration. The first migration includes placing people from source countries which are in abundant supply of labor and population, such as Bangladesh and Indonesia, to transient countries like that of Singapore and Malaysia, which is in dire need of blue-collar labor. Our key focus is on the second migration, that is placing skilled blue-collar workers having appropriate expertise and matching them with relevant employers in destination countries like that of Canada and New Zealand. One of the main reasons we are calling this the destination countries is because in countries like Singapore, the migrant workers do not have a pathway to residency. However, in countries like Canada, for instance, is ready to serve them with a PR. Thank you, Sazzad, for changing the slide. So we at Crane, we're addressing the particular gap in the market. According to BCG, it believes that the global workforce problem is a $10 trillion problem. But amongst that, we are at Crane, we are trying to, and attempting to address the $368 billion segment of it. And at Crane, out of the 281 migrant workers, we are targeting to serve and address the problems of the 46 million blue-collar migrants. So this is our particular target space. The solution which we're serving at Crane, it's phenomenal, but yet it's extremely simple. We want to be 90% cheaper for the migrants and 16 times more efficient for the employers. And we are doing this by addressing the problems of skills mismatch. And all of this is done even without even needing a resume. At this moment, we have currently more than 18,500 screened candidates already ready in our system, in our pool to be placed. And eventually down the line, with time, we would be adding other services and components like payrolls and appraisals to actually make the entire migrant worker recruitment process ecosystem as simple and as hassle-free as possible. One of the main ways that we are very different from the conventional staffing agencies or recruitment agencies in the market is that we are not just like a typical job matching platform. Of course, we do start from interviews to screenings to appraisals, but additionally, we also take care of all the hassles regarding the visa processing processes. And guess what? We don't just stop there. We take care of all of that so that it makes the life easier for employers. And it is as similar or as same as the employers would have provided a simple job offer letter as they would have done in any other job recruitment processes for any other typical job candidate. For instance, if the British Petroleum or BP decides to hire 1,000 people from us tomorrow, we won't just stop at hiring. We at Crane, we would even attempt to observe the progress of the employees even after they start joining their workplaces. Our workforce management BTP SaaS software also would provide payroll and performance measurements to rank the best performers in our system. And this would provide and complete a feedback loop to our AI recommendations engine to establish better hires for the future. So our recommendation engine or our AI system gets better with each passing day. Our team's passion and experience, I believe, is our unfair advantage. Our CEO, Sazzad, prior to joining Crane, he was leading an edtech social enterprise called SDI Academy, where he was able to engage with over more than 140,000 migrant workers. And SDI Academy empowered them with communication skills for a safer workplace. And his efforts, impact, and work with SDI Academy was well recognized by Forbes and the Obama Foundation. Our CTO, Sham, his background lies largely within machine learning and automation. But we have observed that he has a deep passion and ambition to make the migrant ecosystem better. His work experience includes working in places like Goldman Sachs, Ninja Van, and Edison Email. and his background in automation and machine learning is what keeps our digital system moving forward. We also have Shreya in our team, who has been with us almost since the start, and her experience of working in the migrant ecosystem for more than 5 years is a valuable asset to our team at Crane. As the Chief Operating Officer, my aim and ambition is to understand the particular policy changes to create impact for the long term. And we at Crane, we are trying to do this by reflecting on various labor and supply side policies of things to address the labor shortage issue. And as the Chief Operating Officer, I'm trying to address the particular problems and align them with the labor shortages of different countries, eventually bridging a bridge for further economic integration of the migrant workers in the destination countries. And at the end, forming a seamless migrant ecosystem process. We're also blessed to have great advisors. We have Colin Sloman in our strategic advisory board, and his expertise lies largely with in the energy and construction space. He was the former managing director for Accenture Europe and the former HR director for Saudi Aramco, and he has been advising big companies like the British Petroleum or BP. We also have Paul Bradley and his expertise largely within the hospitality sector. And Professor Pasha has been consulting and advising big companies like Toyota, and his experience of largely advising and consulting manufacturing sector is also a very blessing asset for us. And our focus is to use all of their ideas to really understand where the gaps are and to maximize our effort on top of that and combine all of that based on their expertise. I strongly believe in our potential of Crane. The team strongly believes in the potential of Crane, but it's not just us. It's also the companies, the employers of these blue-collar workers who also agree to our solution. At this moment, we already have more than $1.6 million of contracts signed, and we are in talks and deep conversations with big places and companies and employers like Shell, IKEA right now to get to the next level. At this moment, we are seeking capital to fulfill the current contract and also to scale our solution to reach newer horizons through our deep technology. Thank you.
Thank you, Nazmus. So thanks for sharing all about what we are doing at Crane and the different ways that we are trying to empower the migrants and provide great pathways. But we also understand the competitive landscape. We have competitors, but they're in the domestic space. We have people like Workrise who have raised a huge amount of resources, like $300 million at Series D at a $2.9 billion valuation. And they're only focusing on a tiny fraction in Texas for the oil and gas sector. What we are hoping to do is to disrupt the cross-border space to enable global workforce to be connected and combat this labor shortage. One of the fastest growing unicorn in India is Apna. They're also focusing mostly in India and focusing on the blue collar segment. Without even having a revenue, they have already surpassed $1.1 billion valuation. But we believe that utilizing all this advantage, and in fact, even collaborating with some of them, like Workrise, will be able to provide and leverage on our supply side advantage and work with their demand side advantage to form a great coalition. The way that our business model works is a three-pronged one. First of all, we charge a placement fee, and that is a co-funding model so that there is not too much burden for financial on either side. For the first migration from source country to the transient countries, we charge $4,000 flat, out of which $2,000 is paid by migrant workers and $2,000 is paid by the employers. For the second migration from the transient countries to the destination countries, because of the hike in the salary almost 4 to 5 times, we are charging $8,000, out of which $4,000 is paid by employers and $4,000 is paid by migrants, which is a far cry from the $80,000 they're currently paying. We are also going to be introducing the workforce management software, which will enable us and the employers to focus on onboarding, attendance, task management, and incident reporting. But this will also allow us to do the measurement for the performance of the workers that we are placing, and of course, creating a greater AI recommendations engine. And this will be a B2B SaaS app with a great margins. On the value-added integration, we aim to become a one-stop portal for migrants, where they'll have access to remittance, loan, and even have a social network to connect with other migrants around them. who share the common interest. And the way that we'll be able to maximize this is, first of all, by integrating existing solutions that are already in place, like Western Union, Remitly, and etc. So currently, even with the current model, despite charging almost a fraction of the market price, because of our automation as well as volume, we'll be able to have a 30% margin for the first migration and 40% margin for the second migration. For the B2B SaaS product, for the workforce management, we have a 80 to 90% margin based on the sales cycle. Last but not least, instead of doing our own remittance, by integrating the existing solutions that people are already familiar with, we'll be able to charge a 20% commission per transaction from those players. So in summary, just for the employers itself, who are currently paying up to 35% of the annual salary, that goes up between $30,000 to $50,000, we're charging a flat fee of $4,000 per placement. And the way that we're able to do, as mentioned earlier, through automation as well as volume. So our sweet spot is companies that are hiring between 100 to 200 workers. Of course, if more, that's even better. Secondly, we are able to cut the processing time by a big margin. First of all, because we do not have to source for candidates from scratch, because we already have the pool of candidates in our database. We're able to place those workers and match them accordingly by focusing on the skill sets that is needed. Secondly, we're in talks with Ministry of Labor in Canada and in New Zealand and few other countries to align with their labor shortage to fast track those processes. So we are in talk. We had verbal agreement to have a pilot test to do it within 3 to 4 weeks instead of the current requirements. For the skills match, currently, as mentioned, there's an 88% mismatch between the skills that is required versus the skills that the migrant workers possess. We are offering 100% match. I know that's a bold claim, but the way that we ensure that there is 100% match is that we offer a 90 days window period after placing the migrants to ensure that there's a perfect match of what the employers are looking for. If they're not satisfied with the performance or with the skill sets, we are able to provide a free replacement and find another job for the migrants, and of course, another suitable candidate for the employers for free. And we are future-proofing through technology, where our AI recommendations engines learns from the preference of the employers and gets better every time. We have had 7 years of working relationship with Ministry of Manpower in Singapore, and they have endorsed us through their newsletter, as well as we were part of the task force during the pandemic. But we have also built a trusted brand to over 140,000 migrants over the past 8 years. And we have access to 1.4 million migrants in Singapore, but a lot more beyond Singapore through the social network. My background being of Bangladeshi origin founder, but also growing up in Singapore, provides the advantage of knowing on the both side. But we also have an advisor who used to be the former CEO of Startup Bangladesh Limited, who advises us on the government initiatives. Our go-to-market strategy to accelerate the impact is, first of all, aligning ourselves with the needs of the Ministry of Labor in the destination countries where we are going, by getting introduction to the trade associations of construction, of petroleum and gas, as well as hospitality sectors, to get introduced to the employers who are hiring. Second of all, for the large companies like BP, Shell, as well as IKEA, we are having a direct sales through introductions. But last but not least, by forming an alliance with the existing staffing agencies and having a revenue sharing model where their strength is on the employer side and our strength is on the supply side, we can also dominate different markets much faster. Right now is the best time for our solution. First of all, because this is the hardest the world has been hit with the labor shortage problem. In North America today, there's a 15 million shortage, and this is only going to get worse with aging population. UK and Europe is 20 million currently, but it is expected to go to 85 million by 2050. Australia and New Zealand has currently 5 million shortage, but it is only growing every single day. A lot of the government has relaxed their immigration policy after COVID because to cope with the growing demand for labor. So right now is a great time. But not only on this side, we also have a great receptiveness from the migrant workers, especially because a lot of them right now have smartphone, and they are also more educated on utilizing them for having solutions, especially during the pandemic. So we are raising a $3.5 million round to scale our impact and focus on 3 core areas. One is to grow a cutting-edge technology team that can form a scalable solution where migrants don't even need to fill up a resume and do all the documentation, but our AI engine will populate the resume based on the tags that they put in. So that is a lot more scalable. Second of all, to focus on our immigration legal team who will help with the visa processing and all the work permit application. Last but not least, to have a great business development team who will be able to expand our work in different geographies by working with the employers who needs to hire in these sectors. So with this, we'll be able to focus on offices in 3 regions, Singapore, Canada, and New Zealand. We'll be able to launch our app in Android and iOS. But what this will enable us to do is to do a 1,500 placement in the next 18 months, which will generate about $12 million in revenue. But wait, what if we had more money, right? But before that, this is not just about money. This will create a lot of impact. First of all, we'll be saving 960,000, almost 1 million man hours by the employers. Second of all, it'll generate an $81 million of additional income for migrants because of the increase in salary, just by the 1,500 people. And it'll save a staggering $69 million by these 1,500 migrants who would have otherwise paid to these exorbitant prices to the various agencies. We'll also meet the 3 sustainable development goals. First of all, no poverty, but 8 and main one, the decent work and economic growth. Last but not least, with partnerships for the goal, we'll be able to achieve a great outcome for not just the migrants, but also for the businesses who are hiring and facing labor shortage. As mentioned, what if we had more resources? If we had $25 million today, we know the roadmap to do even better. We know the roadmap to acquire 300,000 monthly active users. We will launch also our B2B SaaS workforce management app that will generate additional income, but also to focus on the performance review. And we'll expand our offices to a few other regions. If we had even more resources, we would hire in-house legal team that would cut down the cost by 50%, but also increase our gross margin, and we'll have a 65% revenue margin. Second of all, we'll be able to future-proof the technology by focusing on value-added integration like remittance, mobile app, and focus on global expansion to 6 to 8 regions. These are the countries where we would set up an office if we had the resources. Singapore, Australia, Canada, US, UK, Germany, and France, which are hiring a lot of people and having the highest need for migrants. Without even expanding our current database of 18,500 screen candidates, if we just place all of them in the next 18 months, this will generate $148 million of total gross revenue. But more than that, it will generate a huge amount of impact and transform the lives of millions of migrant workers. Thank you. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them.
Thanks so much. Well, I think we have so much to talk about. I don't know where to start. So first of all, I think we should start with hearing more about each of you. So Sazzad, can you tell us a little bit about your own personal journey as to what happened in your life and how did you get to where you are now?
Thank you, Julia. I think I briefly shared a little bit that I was originally born in Bangladesh, and growing up in Bangladesh, I was very fortunate to be from a middle-class family where I didn't have to worry too much about everything else and had a decent education. But I had a lot of exposure to poverty, to people in need, and I think that shaped how I thought. And one of the things I would say is that I was also lucky to move to Singapore before I got desensitized. So a lot of my peers who grew up and didn't move, and this is what happens in any country in general, is that they get desensitized to poverty and the needs. And because of their own needs, they can't prioritize those. But I was in a privileged position after moving to Singapore and struggling, of course, going through that journey of language barrier and understanding and empathizing with the migrants. I wanted to do something that would impact and utilizing my privilege to create a better future for others. So I was very lucky that my dad, managed to get a permanent residence in Singapore and brought our family. And I was thinking, if I could do that, could I provide opportunities for others as well through these means that we are doing? So my mission in life is to provide access to opportunities for as many people as possible.
So did you go to university, Sazzad? What did you study?
I did. I haven't finished, but I did. I went to Nanyang Technological University, studied electrical and electronics engineering. It's still one of my passion, and I want to do clean tech sometimes down the road. Again, working in impact. But the whole idea is to utilize cutting edge technology to create impact for masses.
It's brilliant. Thanks. And Nazmus, how about you? What's your story?
Yeah, so I was born in rural Bangladesh in a very small town called Sirajganj, and I basically raised up like I was growing up in like in almost on the outskirts of Dhaka. So I was actually very much distant from the actual like the hassles of the urban life. But as soon as I was growing up, I started going to school and meeting with people. I basically like being in Bangladesh, we can like if you come to Bangladesh, we can directly detect and identify that there's a huge income gap between the rich and the poor, and the gap is increasing each day. So while I was growing up, at the same time, while I was growing up, I was reading the newspaper or talking with people. I could feel that something needs to be done to address this particular problem. And Bangladesh is an economy which is very much driven by remittance income, which is also like concerns the migrant ecosystem. So I believe that one of my biggest ambitions in life, that yeah, like I come from rural Bengal. Most of the people who are the migrant workers, they also like come from rural Bangladesh or rural India, or like some people say as like rural India is the real India. So I always wanted to address the platforms of the people at the bottom of the economic pyramid, and that's why I'm actually trying to accelerate the impact through Crane HR. And we are trying to it's like many other tech startups, and I completely respect that a lot of the tech startups actually improves the lives of the people whose lives are already improved. But we at Crane, we are a different type of a tech startup where we are trying to address and make the lives of the people better who actually deserve to live a better life. Like it's their right. So we are trying to address like this particular need through Crane HR. And we are a sustainable economically sustainable venture, but impact is at our heart, and that really drive me to actually be involved with Crane. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Nazmus. So did you go to university in Bangladesh, or when did you?
Yeah, so I'm currently in the UK. Like I'm pursuing an economics degree at the University of Warwick, besides working at Crane. Yeah.
Wow, congratulations. That must be hard work.
Yeah, but I'm enjoying it. Like working at Crane isn't working. I'm actually like learning constantly at the same time, and
Yeah,
it's a fulfilling
yeah, I'm
experience.
sure that'll be a good dissertation subject, if nothing else.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, yeah.
Okay, great. And we talk about improving people's lives, and we can talk a lot more about that. But tell me more, because as I understand it, I love the way you split it up into the first stage and then helping people to migrate to maybe somewhere where they may settle. But how are these people going to give back to the communities they've come from, rather than simply leaving as a sort of brain drain of what? And even if they're not highly educated, they're clearly highly motivated, energetic, capable people. Education isn't everything.
Mhm.
Thanks, Julia, for that question. I think that's a valid concern, which is why we are constantly, aligning our ideas with both the source country where the migrants are originally coming from, with the transient country as well as the destination country. So there's a smooth integration as well as contribution back to the economy. So we had this conversation with the Bangladeshi government officials, and remittance, as Nazmus mentioned, is one of the highest contributing factor for the GDP. But that's just one factor, right? And it's a short-term factor, as you'd know. The long-term contribution is that this 46 million migrant blue-collar workers that we are targeting, it's not just them. Each of them have a family members of 4 to 5 people. So that's about 200 million people that we are talking about. By improving their life, it's not just themselves, but their community and extended family in the spaces itself. So we have had students who graduated from our academy. They started a charity back in their hometown to impact the lives of people, setting up, medical screening, setting up education and schools. So we try to find a way for them to contribute. And as they do better, they can give back and do better. So we don't forget their roots, where they come from. They contribute to the, of course, economy of the countries that they're in, but also give back to the community that they came from. And we believe that this duality of the identity is the new way of moving forward. We're not, having the brain drain problem.
Thank you. That's really interesting. So to go back to the whole subject of Singapore, you're established in Singapore,
Yeah.
Sazzad, are you? Is that right? So can you tell me a bit about the benefits of Singapore as you see them, as a sort of startup place and a place to run a startup?
Absolutely. I think one of the easiest thing in Singapore is to incorporate a company, as most would say. And the reason I say that is because when I was registering SDI Academy, I didn't know anything about registering a company. I simply Googled and registered that company on that day when we were ready to launch, while we were working on all of that. And that was a very seamless process, which I realized later on going around the world and seeing the different complicated process, that Singapore is one of the friendliest places to start a company, start a venture. The other thing is, I would say, is that a lot of the things that we learn in school. So I went to a public school in Singapore, which is also very grinding and very hard to be, but which give a lot of the qualities of entrepreneurs. So I say that a lot of the ingredients for entrepreneurship is taught in school. The only thing that is missing in Singapore, I would say, is the risk-taking part, right? Because we've been so safe around this, which is why I think, given my background coming from another country and taking those risks, that has definitely contributed to me taking the risk at a certain point in time. And I believe that slowly people are evolving. I've seen the startup scene growing from 2013 to now and evolving. And as you mentioned, a lot of the unicorns that's come out of this as well. Things are slowly growing and people are seeing this as a path. But one of the things I would say is that there's still a lot more room for growing, but for the starting point, there is quite a bit of support.
Yeah, and how about opening bank accounts and things, which is the thing.
So it was quite easy to open bank accounts as well in Singapore.
Right, that's great. And I noticed from your sort of lists of countries, I think a majority that you're working with at the moment are probably Commonwealth countries. So we've got Bangladesh, India, Singapore, UK, Canada, Australia. I mean, you've obviously got others as well. Yeah. But do you notice any difference when you're dealing between Commonwealth jurisdictions as opposed to other ones? Do you notice anything? Do you notice any ease of doing business at all?
I think it's more in terms of the mindset and the way that the legal structures are formed. There's a lot of similarities in the Commonwealth countries compared to other countries, right? So absolutely, I would say that that makes it easier to understand and replicate the solutions in one country and the other. In terms of the ease, we haven't seen anything yet because, again, we are still at a startup phase doing the cross-border part. We'll see, and with more data, and we'll keep you posted as we see more things. But we hope so. We hope that there will be a lot more ease of doing things cross-border within these Commonwealth countries. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. So you talked about the teaching aspect that you had in particular when you were at SDI Global. Is that still there in Crane HR, or is that still a separate entity, or how does that work these days?
It is a separate entity. SDI Academy is a separate entity compared to SDI Global, but of course we have the same branding because that's what migrants are familiar with. This is just to keep things separate because SDI Academy is very much social impact driven, not so much focusing on the profit generating to keep it sustainable. But whereas Crane HR is going to be a lot more scalable and venture investable, which is what we need to do to make this. So that is more for the ease of doing things, but they complement each other in a lot of ways. For example, the candidate, the alumni from SDI Academy are the candidates for Crane HR because they are part of the entire process. But what's also interesting is there's a whole feedback system as well. For example, as we expand to countries like France and Germany, we are also introducing French and German language in SDI Academy so that people are more prepared before they're going. Because these are some of the limiting factors in attracting talents in those countries. For example, in Germany, they wanted to attract about 400,000 people. They only attracted 30,000 people because most people couldn't speak German and they couldn't enter the country. So by focusing on those bottlenecks, we're able to mitigate those issues.
Yeah, that's interesting. So how does Crane HR advertise to migrant workers, and how do they sign up with Crane?
So we are really lucky because we already have a great pool of migrants to start with who have been through our program, and they love us so much that they refer to their friends.
Do they get any reward for doing that?
So yes, so we give them a discount for referrals. So they get a $200 discount for every friend that they get, and their friends also get a discount, right? So it's a mutual benefit on that side. But interestingly, we actually didn't have to focus on the incentives. We only introduced the incentive later on because we thought they deserved to get some incentive, and it saves our marketing budget as well. So why not pass on those benefits? They were doing it out of their goodwill anyway. Yes. But also we go to dormitories. We have roadshows in the dormitories. We have a social media outreach, and we organize various events anyway. So those are also our touch points to the migrants.
And how do you screen people in this process?
So the way that we screen people, the advantage of starting from Singapore is that a lot of the skill sets are already certified, and those certifications are actually internationally recognized. So for example, if I say that there's a tungsten welder who can weld from 1 mm to 4 mm, and this is given, certification is given by Singapore, usually somebody in Canada, they would recognize that. Or if a truck driver with a class 4 license in Singapore usually is recognized again there itself because of the restrictions and the regulations in Singapore and the high quality of finishing that is. People generally believe that people who can build the Marina Bay Sands that and all the infrastructure that you see on your background, Zoom image, they are qualified to build great infrastructures in other countries as well. So there's that level of trust. But what we are also doing in the long run is to also include practical assessment. So once they are done with the initial matching from the resume, they can do a video interview with the candidates. But beyond that, if they want to do a practical assessment, many of them are looking for videos of them welding, or sometimes the candidates, the employers, if they're hiring a lot of people, they would fly down to Singapore. But what we are experimenting in the long run would be with smart glasses. So something that will enable employers to assess the skill sets of the migrants remotely, and we'll ship them those pair of smart glasses so that they can do that. But that's still in the works, and we hope that with more resources, we'll be able to scale that solution.
Right, right. So would you ever have a sort of virtual, a completely virtual world to do this? Would you go into the metaverse or?
I'm so glad you say that. I don't think it,
Not now.
I don't think it's a far-fetched dream. In fact, I think we want to have a job fair in the metaverse. That's something that we have in plans. But we, at the same time, we also want to focus on what is important and what can add value to them. So at this point in time, what's more important is doing things in physical world. But we'll see how things goes and what's important, right? As we have more resources, we can also experiment with what's important. But absolutely, with what we, just to give a brief preview of what the vision can look like, is somebody who can level up their skills based in the real world, and that will also translate in the metaverse, and then they'll be able to pass through the different interview processes to get to the dream jobs. So that's something that we have in the vision for sure.
Amazing. Yeah, wouldn't that be fun? Yeah. Have your avatars. What's yours going to be, Sazzad?
Exactly. Well, we'll figure that out.
So what's the most time-consuming part? Where are the pain points in the process from screening to onboarding?
You'd be surprised. It is resume building, right? Right now, currently, a lot of those are done manually. So we have a team, like Shreya is one integral part of that, leading that, where we collect all the data points from migrants, whether through WhatsApp and different informal channels, and then we organize those data points into proper resumes and things like that. But the idea and goal is to make that scalable, because the current solution is not scalable, right? What we are doing is building the platform that will be utilizing natural language processing, where they can just put on the tags like on Twitter preferences, and those will populate their resume automatically. So that's what we want to focus on. As most startup gurus says, that do the things that doesn't scale at the beginning, but that gets the job done. That's what we are doing. But we are at the same time building something that will help us scale. Right.
And how do you expedite the visa processing once somebody is accepted and they're going to go? How does that happen? And how do their families join them if that might be the case?
Sure. So one of the biggest reasons why visas and work visas particularly take a long time is because the government takes time to verify the documents, as well as the security clearance for somebody who's entering their country. So what we do, and we collect all of this beforehand, so that to make it even easier, is of course the certifications of the migrants beforehand. And those, because it's done in Singapore, it's usually easier to verify. But eventually we will have accreditation software to authenticate all of this in the long run. But currently it's already recognized. Second part is that the security clearance. So there's police clearance and all of those things that are done in Singapore and that we can do, and also from their home country. So those can be done before even submitting, so that we don't even have to wait for them to come back with the feedback and go back and forth. But this can be done automatically. And as we bring all of this to the platform, this can be done quite seamlessly in the long run. But so that's how we can do that. and also aligning to the needs of the country, right? If there's a big shortage, then it is in the need of the country to expedite the process and fast track those visa application because they need those people faster.
Yeah, but government doesn't always move that fast, does it? Whatever the needs.
So exactly, which is why we are focusing on the countries who needs them the fastest and who are also more open to innovating. So for example, Canada is definitely open. So is New Zealand. And being in an Edmund Hillary Fellow in New Zealand, that helps to work directly with the government. So that's something that we're trying to leverage, same as some of the current opportunities that we have in different countries as well. And once we build those traction and we prove those to those countries, then we can also replicate them in other countries.
So you were mentioning on one of your slides there's 100% match between employers and employees, and I have to say,
I saw this coming.
I'm skeptical. So if someone doesn't work out and they have to move on, and you replace them, what happens to that person who has to move on?
So two things that happens to that person, right? First of all, they have a visa for 2 years that can, minimum 2 years that they can stay in that country that they've already been placed. But all of them that we are placing, they have some level of experience. So they have some level of skill sets in some areas. So if, for example, they don't have the exact qualification that is required, by somehow they miss that and they have landed there, then we can place them as a general labor in another company.
So you would help them at that point?
Yes, we'd help them. So absolutely, we will do that. But at the same time, we will also check how did they fall through the crack, and then we'll try to rectify that processes and our due diligence as well, so that this process gets more streamlined.
Is there any education needed for the employers about who they're employing and how they should be dealing with them?
So absolutely, yeah. I think, Julia, you highlighted a very important point on how to treat the migrants that they are hiring and what to do. A lot of times it's also because of the lack of education. So we have an onboarding system for the migrants, but we are also designing an onboarding system for the employers so that they know how to integrate even within the workforce, because they might have a diverse workforce team. How do they manage the different teams? So we are taking some of the best practices, and coming from multicultural countries like Singapore, where people already work in different teams from different races across different cultures, we are able to replicate that quite easily. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, even within Asia, some Asian groups don't always get on that well, right? Unless there's some integration efforts made. Yeah.
The funniest thing you'd know is that people might sometimes not get along because of the cricket team that they support. So
I suppose the way to deal with that is
we have heard that. We have heard that from an employer before in Singapore. We have heard that from an employer in Singapore, and it was hilarious, but it was a real problem. So we have to educate both sides on that. Yeah.
Yeah. So how's COVID affected what you were doing? Because that must have been an acutely challenging period.
Absolutely. I think COVID changed a lot of things for both better and worse. One of the things was that the SDI Academy that we were running, we were planning to automate that using a tech platform for the Academy, probably sometimes in 2021 or 2022. But COVID forced us to fast track that. And we had to launch our platform in 2020 itself in June. So we cut down the timeline that we had for launching the app, and we did it much earlier. And we had our first 10,000 users, within 3 months, and we had to focus on those things, right? But it also gave us a point to do when COVID first hit. We also switched gears because education was not the priority at that point in time. What was priority was welfare for the migrants, the mental health for the migrants. So we actually integrated mental health modules within our education platform for them to do psychological first aid from Red Cross, and by collaborating with different parties, by working with them, distributing meals. But it gave us a more holistic pictures on where the gaps were, and made us more empathetic towards where the situation was. On the other side, it also showed a lot of flaws in the system. So that was the other thing. For us as an organization, it definitely had few effects. One was that the border closure definitely prevented us to start things anytime earlier. For example, New Zealand's border is still closed. It's only going to open from next month onwards. For the
is that right? I didn't know it was still closed.
For the work permit holders, for tourists, people who doesn't need visa. So I just got back from New Zealand. I had no issues. But people who are going on a work permit from these countries, they it's still slowly opening up as it goes.
That seems counterintuitive. You let tourists in before workers.
I understand, right? So they're trying to be more cautious and things like that, but I think they're slowly going to
So
open
are
up.
there vaccine requirements for workers?
Of course, and they're all vaccinated. So in Singapore, everybody is vaccinated, especially the workers are the first to get vaccinated because they were living in condition that was highly
I
contagious.
remember all of that. Yeah.
Yes, so they're all triple vaccinated mostly.
But it's say in Bangladesh or India, is everyone vaccinated?
People who are coming overseas, there's a requirement for them to be vaccinated, otherwise they can't fly.
And they
But
have to
not
pay for
everyone
that
is.
themselves?
Sorry?
They pay for that themselves?
In Singapore, no, it's by the employers and things. But I mean, Bangladesh, yeah, it is by themselves.
Right,
I think vaccination was free, right, by the government?
Yeah, vaccination is free, and the government actually like handled the situation pretty well. And from like the government is thinking that within the next 6 to 8 months, they will stop giving first and second doses and just focus on boosters, because majority of the population is already almost covered with vaccinations, and it was completely done for free by the government.
Is that Singapore or Bangladesh?
Bangladesh.
That's great, isn't it? Very good, impressive.
Yeah, and also like the Bangladesh government actually like performed as one of the like best performance of this amongst all of these South Asian economies. Like
it's a real bright spot.
Yeah.
That's
great. Yeah, it is. There's a lot of promises, but also some things are now slowly coming in, like inflation, which is affecting everyone.
That's what I was coming to next. Yeah. So what's going on with inflation, and how is it affecting business, migrant workers, recruiters, and are you having to adapt because of this?
So first of all, it impacted us and our fundraising journey quite a bit. I think
because
we started
sort of dried up a bit, hasn't it, in the last few months?
Absolutely. They call it the VC winter period right now, where where there is a lot of shortage of capital, but we still believe that.
I'm hearing, in Silicon Valley, there's not as much money around.
So as much as you say, I think there is money. People are just more cautious of investing, and we believe that regardless of the situation, we will continue, whether it's by bootstrapping. So we've been bootstrapping, and we were supposed to raise slightly earlier so that we can scale this up, but right now we're still bootstrapping and going quite lean. But we believe that the model that we are working on, it'll go maybe slightly slower than expected, but we'll still continue to grow, and then we will raise soon, right? So right now we're planning to raise so that we can scale this up, and as borders are opening. On the migrant side, because we charge a $4,000 USD, which has increased in the value from the currency in the home country. For example, US dollars in Bangladesh right now is about 110 taka, which used to be only about 80 taka. So that has gone up quite a bit, and so that affects slightly. But so far we haven't felt it yet, but maybe we'll feel it down the road. Yeah, the effect, and we'll try to discount it as much as possible to cushion that effect.
Right. So with your employees, well, not with your employees, with the migrant workers, how the payroll, the appraisals, and so on, that's all handled by the employers they go to work for, is it? Or do you get feedback on that?
So currently this is done by different kind of services that they're engaging, the employers themselves. So which is why we are trying to streamline the processes and include that as part of our offering as well through the B2B SaaS product. So for example, what's currently happening is that if there is say 6 to 7 teams on the ground working on 7 different sites in a construction sites, building 7 homes, the way that they're communicating about the project update is through WhatsApp. And you'd be surprised to know that they're sending pictures so that, oh, painting is done, electrical wiring is done, things like that. And there is no proper way of doing that. How we are trying to change that is, first of all, the attendance. We are able to do that using geofencing technology, which will allow easy attendance taking, and based on that, the payroll can be calculated based on when they have gone to the site. The payroll can be calculated, and then that can be automatically done with one click or with no click at all, based on how they program it, right? And it'll be automatically calculated and things like that. So we are trying to make the job of the employers easy as well, and also to see who their best performers are, who can get the job done with a great finishing and great things. And those feedbacks are taken as a part of our data point to provide recommendations for the future hire.
So you collect all of that data as well. You have all of that data, because that data in itself will be an enormous tool, won't it, for your future business, for your analytics?
Absolutely. Yeah. But those are additional services. The B2B SaaS is an additional service.
Yeah. And are you going to, or are you using AI? Looking at
Yes,
all
we are.
Yeah.
We are using AI for that.
And how do you think that will progress in the future? What would be your objective with the AI offering?
So the whole point of the AI is to streamline the processes that are very manual based. So for example, even the automation for calculating the man hours that is done and the pay grade that is done and when is overtime and all that. So that's taken, that's one thing. But the feedback loop that creates for the recommendations engine, that's where the AI will play a huge role in providing better recommendations, which I think is what will build our technology moat for the future, where people would not be able to compete with that as we create more data points.
I have a question for Nazmus, and then I'll move quickly to some of the questions that people listening have put in the chat box. But Nazmus, how does the UK compare with Bangladesh? What do you think of the UK?
So like the first particular, like, what can I say, exposure I had is that like UK, I can see that UK is a home to a large amount of British Bangladeshi community.
Yeah,
So I actually
the
felt
UK
that
is so
UK,
fortunate to have this great diversity from its former diaspora. Yeah.
yeah, like Birmingham, London, or even to some extent Manchester too. So I was like, like even in the initial few months I moved to the UK, I did miss my family, I did miss my mom, but like I felt that UK was a home away from home because a lot of my similar people like me were around me. So that was the first thing. And also like the startup culture between Bangladesh and the UK is, I would say, is vastly different, because the Bangladeshi startup culture, it mostly started around 2011 or 2010, but UK, like London, has been a financial hub for like years and years and so on. So I felt that, yeah, like I could I could build a bridge or connect or integrate my learnings from being in rural Bangladesh to being in like at the center of the world, and both of these learnings were like equally very much valuable to me.
Good.
And also,
I hope they really help your business as well. That's really exciting to hear that, Nazmus. Thank you. I'm just going to move quickly to a few questions in the chat. So here's an interesting one. What about the families of migrant workers that usually stay behind at home, or do they go with them, and how do they feel about it?
Thanks, Julia, for the question. So what happens is that for the first 2 years, depends on the country, 2 to 3 years, they are on a work permit where their families are allowed to come on a visitor pass and stay with them for a certain period of time. For example, in New Zealand, it's about 9 months. In other countries, it's 6 months. So they can do that, and they can do multiple times. But what happens is that after 2 to 3 years, the countries that, especially the destination countries, will have processes for them to become permanent residents, and that's when they can bring their families along with them. So that's the process. So in the long run, that is their future plans.
Another question: do you screen recruiters? I mean, do you interface with recruiters? And if you do you screen them?
So I think I'm not sure if the person who's asking, is it asking about our recruitment partner?
No, I think so. I think what they're getting at is, you could go direct to the workers, or do you actually sometimes work with recruiters who are dealing?
No, so we go directly with the
Right, so you're not working with recruiters.
We don't work with recruiters. Yeah.
Right, okay. And there's another question here, and in fact this echoes something which I was going to ask, so this are kind of similar. So the question is, how does you both see your efforts maturing, and how do you think that your problems that you face will change in, say, 5 years' time? And my question was going to be, where do you see yourselves and Crane in 5 years' time? So this is a 5-year question.
Wow, thank you. I'll let Nazmus take that first.
Yeah, so
yeah.
So according to the effort, like Randstand, which is also like a very big name in the HR ecosystem, it believes, like, it projects, or it actually is trying to project that by 2030 the entire global workforce problem, or at least the blue collar migrant, or like the blue collar problem, would actually be facing a shortage of around 85 million people. And so, like, we also feel like, yeah, this is a need which needs to be filled. This is a problem which needs to be solved. And we're trying to design our ambitions in such a way that we are able to address the problems of the migrant ecosystem as much as possible. So we are like in line with the 85 million labor shortage. We are trying to frame our solutions according to it, and also our plans. And in terms of like seeing Crane in 5 years, I personally I would say that my heart is deeply in love with the idea of Crane. That's why I'm putting my soul in it. So I see Crane as a what can I say, like a one-stop platform for all sort of migrant related issues in the next 5 years, making it sort of a super app, like starting like anything the migrants will have, like a particular issue or a problem, we would be their best friend. And we would be one of their friends who they can easily rely on with trust, faith, and and also surety. So yeah, and we are taking, and we know that it's a big responsibility, but we feel that our passion and our enthusiasm is one of the main drivers that actually helps us feel interested in solving this particular problem. So in the next 5 years, we want to be like a super app sort of platform for all sorts of migrant related queries.
That's brilliant. And Sazzad, what does the future hold? Are you going to do an IPO? What's your plans?
Yeah, before I get into that, answer, I just wanted to say how proud I was to hear Nazmus's answer, and to think that it only took one Bangladeshi meal in Brick Lane in London to brainwash him.
Obviously, very good food.
to get him on board. And so incredibly proud to have people who share similar vision. So I think that is a great part for me. So how I see my personal growth is to be someone who will be groomed into the leadership position that requires that will enable Crane to achieve those goals in the long run. Of course, we see ourselves as a one-stop portal for migrant workers, not just in jobs, but also in all their other needs, even to the point of having like a social network for them to meet other migrants or other blue-collar workers around them who shares common interests, right? So almost like a LinkedIn for blue-collar workers. That's something that we are building in the next 5 years. So we see that, and we want to be the go-to portal for migrants anywhere around the world in the next 5 years. And to quantify the metrics, we want to place at least 1 million migrants in the next 5 years. All around the world. Yeah, so that's where I see. And we want to have enough resources to experiment with more things and have more extension of the work that we do.
Okay, well, I really think this is great. I love you guys, love what you're doing. I really think it's fantastic, and I wish you huge success. And I hope we can have another chat in a few months' time to see and talk about the progress that you guys have made. So I think it's actually more than an hour since we started. And so I really think everybody who's listened has got a pretty clear understanding of a lot more about the global marketplace for blue collar workers and all the benefits and attractions of the sort of solution that you're offering from everybody's point of view. So thank you so much for joining us today, Sazzad and Nazmus. It was really great. And thank you to everyone who's listened and joined in with this webinar. So we look forward to seeing you again at another event soon. Thank you again, and bye.